Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the continuation of the City of Waterloo Council meeting of June 16th, 2025. I'm checking in again with Disclosure of Pecuniary Interest Council. Seeing none, just as a reminder, I'm conflicted on item 11A associated with the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Items removed from consent motion, there's none, we've dealt with that. Staff reports, we're moving on to staff report number 10A, lease agreement for St. Columba Art Space, and we're starting out with a presentation from Estero. Welcome, Estero.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, and thank you all for this opportunity to provide you with some more information on this lease agreement. In February, Council approved the acquisition of 250 Lincoln Road to help the city achieve its affordable housing target. Since the redevelopment process is anticipated to take a minimum of 3 years, Council also approved temporary use of the facility as a city programming space for community art organizations and other city programs up to 3 years. Interim use of the space for the arts was identified as an opportunity by the neighborhood prior to the city's acquisition of the property. This use aligns with the strategic plan priority of complete community and the objectives of investing in arts experiences, creating vibrant public spaces, and supporting complete neighborhoods. The development of an arts incubator and culture hubs is also an objective in the city's economic development strategy. Community consultation done in collaboration with our neighboring municipalities in 2023 and 2024 highlighted lack of space as a major barrier for the arts community. Although there are some creative spaces for artists regionally, existing spaces like 44 Gaukel and Globe Studios in Kitchener are at capacity, have very low turnover, and have active wait lists. City support for creative spaces is critical to the sector at a time when artists are struggling with the impacts of rising rental prices, gentrification, and economic instability. For the city, investment in an arts incubator space fuels innovation and contributes to workforce attraction and retention. Oops, sorry, I didn't advance my slides. So why Meanwhile spaces? As the name suggests, Meanwhile spaces are temporary in nature by design and make use of properties that are temporarily unoccupied, similar to the recent trend of pop-up shops. These spaces are not intended to replace or duplicate permanent galleries, community art centers, or recreation facilities. Rather, they provide short-term space that supports artist collaborations, time-limited projects, rehearsals, short-run performances, and the development of new workshop formats. Alex Glass, who will be speaking later this evening, will provide more information about the Meanwhile Spaces movement and about the pilot program in her presentation to follow. In 2024, the City of Waterloo and Arts Build Ontario were selected by Canadian Heritage's Canada Cultural Spaces Fund to pilot the Meanwhile Spaces program to address urgent space needs in the arts sector. In January 2025, Arts Build led a request for expressions of interest that received 71 applications. 10 artist studio spaces were created at 99 King in Kitchener in May, and just last week, 11 artists and arts organizations began activation of Wing 404. Many of the needs identified by the remaining applicants fit well with the space at St. Columba. The Meanwhile Spaces pilot represents a collaborative investment in creative space development with operational funding from Canadian Heritage, coordination and staffing by Arts Build, and the contribution of in-kind space by the City of Waterloo. Expanding the program, the Meanwhile Spaces program, to St. Columba's site extends the value of existing funding and expertise, activating the site for community use while long-term housing plans are underway. A 3-year lease enables Arts Build Ontario to expand the Meanwhile Spaces pilot, leverage additional funding opportunities, and maximize community benefit. This time frame also provides staff with time to gather more specific data and insights on the community's creative space needs to guide future cultural infrastructure decisions. Given the steps for site redevelopment, including steps like community consultation, zone change requirements, REOI processes, design, site plan approval processes, and so on, We know it's unlikely that the construction of affordable housing will begin any sooner than 2.5 to 3 years, making interim activation both feasible and strategic. As mentioned, a 3-year lease with Arts Build for the operation of the St. Columba Art Space builds on our existing partnership. The processes we have established at the Wing 404 and current artist waiting lists mean that expansion of the program to the St. Columba site will allow activation to begin as early as this fall. This partnership also allows us to leverage current Canada Cultural Spaces Fund dollars to activate the site with minimal cost to the city and enables timely, responsive use of the space that directly addresses both local art sector needs and the desires of the neighborhoods surrounding the St. Columba site. For more than 20 years, Arts Build services have supported organizations, artists, and municipalities. An art space at St. Columba allows us to strengthen our collaboration with this trusted partner already engaged in creative space development. So in conclusion, by activating St. Columba as a temporary art space through the Meanwhile Spaces program, the city has a unique opportunity to respond to urgent needs in the art sector, to support economic and creative vitality, to strengthen partnerships with trusted organizations, to leverage existing funding and resources, and to make meaningful use of a city-owned property, now and as part of its future. This community-focused step aligns with our cultural, economic, and housing priorities.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions, Council? We can wait and ask questions after we've heard all the delegations, if that makes sense. Yep. Thank you, Estero. Okay, so based on the delegations that have registered, we have an hour of delegations based on registered time. So I just thought I'd let people know if someone's already said what you wanted to say and you can say it more quickly, feel free. But of course, you're entitled to the time that you were registered for. So the first delegate is Alex Glass, the Executive Director of Arts Build Ontario. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor McCabe and members of council. My name is Alex Glass, and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Build Ontario, and I'm here with my board president, Bryn Jones, this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm here to express our strong support for the staff recommendation to lease the St. Columba Church site to Arts Build Ontario for a 3-year term as part of the Meanwhile Spaces pilot. Arts Build Ontario is a provincial nonprofit that has supported art space development for over 20 years, and we work directly in Waterloo region for the past 15. Our work is rooted in social purpose, supporting cultural infrastructure, and activating underused buildings as creative, community-serving spaces while contributing to long-term city building goals. The Meanwhile Spaces model is a temporary use strategy for vacant or underused spaces, an approach that brings life, activity, and public value into buildings awaiting redevelopment. Our pilot, launched in collaboration with the Department of Canadian Heritage, the City of Waterloo, and Why Not Theatre, supports artists and cultural groups during periods when permanent infrastructure isn't yet available. It's about making use of what we have now while planning for the future. The pilot originated in late 2023 during a roundtable convened to address the art space crisis in Waterloo region. The Canada Cultural Spaces Fund approached Arts Build and the City of Waterloo to undertake this pilot to explore the impact of temporary space models. At ABO, we work hand in hand with artists and municipalities to animate these spaces with care and intention. At St. Columba, just as we've done at Wing 404 and 44 Gaukel with the City of Kitchener, our team will manage tenant onboarding, day-to-day support, logistics, and programming, and at St. Columba, all at no operational cost to the city. We serve as a bridge between municipal infrastructure and artistic use, ensuring spaces are not only filled, but supported, animated, and welcoming. Our role is deeply practical. We answer questions, support programming, respond to tenant needs, promote events, and ensure the space is well cared for. We maintain systems for booking short and long-term use, track impact, and coordinate with municipal departments across facilities, operations, and security. In 2016, we partnered with the City of Kitchener to activate 44 Gaukel, a building once viewed as temporary and underutilized. We're grateful to the city for trusting us to steward that site for nearly 9 years. Through that time, the space became something more than a project. It became a creative home. Over the years, 44 Gaukel welcomed over 160 rental groups and 64 creative tenants. Among them are DORA award-winning Greenlight Arts, Juno-recognized Just Ideas, whose songs were written and recorded on site, and Good Company Productions, a driving force behind many of the region's most vibrant live music events. The impact extended well beyond the walls of the building. Artists brought energy, audiences, and community into the space, sparking the pedestrianization of Gaukel Street, inspiring Gaukel Block, and contributing to the growing vibrancy of the downtown core. What began as an interim space became a catalyst for transformation, demonstrating how creative activity can gradually renew underused areas and contribute to a more connected and engaged city. St. Columba represents the next step, not only as an interim arts hub, but as a community asset ready to be reactivated. The building is publicly owned and currently vacant. Over 40 letters of support from neighbors, or I believe more, have called for it to be used by artists and cultural groups now. While the long-term plan for the site includes mixed-use development with affordable housing, activating the space now offers public benefit in the interim. It keeps the building maintained, ensures it's used meaningfully, and builds momentum for future city building goals. While Waterloo is home to exceptional institutions like the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery and Button Factory Arts, we currently lack flexible, inclusive, and affordable creative hub space, a space where emerging and established artists alike can create, collaborate, and grow. What we're missing is a space that supports the day-to-day, behind-the-scenes work of the arts, rehearsal, experimentation, production, and community building space. Artists don't thrive in isolation. They thrive in creative ecosystems, spaces that offer access, shared energy, and cross-pollination. That's what a creative hub can offer. It fosters informal collaboration, peer-to-peer support, and visibility. And it gives artists a platform to scale their practice, apply for funding, or reach wider audiences. The impact of that can be transformational, not only for the artist, but for the community around them. And yet, we also know that many artists have a barrier more than just space. They have a financial barrier too. A recent national survey conducted by Hill Strategies Research and the Cultural Human Resources Council in 2024 revealed that 69% of artists experience financial stress, and 66% earn less than $40,000 annually from their creative work, with 21% earning under $10,000. BIPOC artists are even more impacted. 72% earn under $40,000, and 85% report financial stress. These numbers are significant. In this context, access to affordable space, community-supported creative space isn't just helpful, it can be essential to sustaining an artist's practice and livelihood. Since launching the pilot earlier this year, we've opened 2 sites. 99 King Street in Kitchener, now home to 10 visual artists in partnership with Lowland Properties, and Wing 404 in partnership with the City of Waterloo. Both sites are supporting 21 artists and arts groups right now. In our first intake, we received 71 expressions of interest. We were only able to support 21. That means that more than 50 artists and organizations are still actively looking for space. At 44 Gaukel, our waitlist remains steady with over 30 groups seeking access. This project is designed with inclusion in mind. 43% of applicants were Indigenous, Black, or people of color. 54% identified as 2S LGBTQ+. 81% identified as woman, trans, or gender diverse. We've already seen the impact in Waterloo. At Wing 404, we've built strong relationships with our neighbors at the RCAF side of the building, and their enthusiasm for collaboration and the beginnings of shared programming are already taking shape. Meanwhile, spaces don't just benefit artists, they benefit the surrounding community. We anticipate hundreds of residents could experience programs, workshops, exhibitions, and performances at St. Columba if the lease is approved. Activating St. Columba now creates new possibilities for creative work and connection in the heart of a growing neighborhood. The return is clear. Waterloo Region's creative industries contribute over $633 million annually locally to GDP. Over 14,000 jobs are supported by the sector. Cultural tourism brings in over 150 million annually, with the average visitor spending $114 per trip. These aren't abstract numbers, they reflect real economic and social value that begins with access to space. And Waterloo's leadership is being noticed. At the 2025 Creative City Network of Canada Summit in Kingston later this fall, our session on the Meanwhile Space pilot featuring Waterloo's role was cited as a must-see presentation. Municipalities across Ontario have reached out, asking how to adopt the Waterloo model in their own communities. In summary, the St. Columba activation offers an immediate response to documented demand for art space, no added operating cost to the city, a bridge toward future development, including affordable housing, a boost to Waterloo's creative economy and community well-being, and a chance to take the lead in shaping national models for cultural infrastructure. On behalf of Arts Build Ontario, our team, our partners, and the many artists still waiting for space, I respectfully ask that you support the staff recommendation. We are ready to activate this space with care, purpose, and a deep commitment to community. Thank you for your time and for your continued leadership in building a more creative, inclusive, and resilient Waterloo.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we never clap in council chambers. Oh, sorry, it's just, that can be really intimidating for some people that maybe have a different opinion. Do you mind returning to the podium? Some members of council may have some questions, and so I just wanted to see if anyone had questions. Mayor McCabe, and then Councillor Wright. Okay, Councillor Wright.
I will take the lead then. Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you can describe for us a little bit what the leases might be like at for the tenants at St. Columba. The report indicated that they might be a little bit longer leases than what you had implemented at Wing 404. And I'm just wondering if it's the same subsidization model that Canadian Heritage has worked with you to provide at Wing 404.
Thanks for that question. We would be looking at a lease structure that's before or below market rent for our artists. So access is incredibly important for our artists there. The lease structure with a 3-year term allows for an organization or an arts collective to lease for 3 years, providing more security. So we have, in comparison with our other 2 sites that are a part of the program, we have 1-year leases with those sites. So this provides that trajectory for those groups.
Councillor Hanmer.
Alex, thank you very much for your presentation and giving us a good overview of how Arts Build Ontario works and what you're hoping to do here. I'm just curious that should we go ahead with approving the lease to you, how long will it take you to have the space available and ready to go?
Well, that's a great question. I would anticipate when the site is ready for us to start occupancy, we would use the time leading up to that to convene our advisory committee and do a call for an intake period to make sure it's an equitable and transparent process. So once it's ready, we're ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just follow on based on your response. I'm understanding from the report that you had 71 applicants, and you said earlier that there still are 50 people looking for space, and you would still do another call for applicants?
We would, because the timing, we want to make sure it's equitable. It's almost like a grant, if you think about it. Projects are changing all the time, and needs are changing all the time. So we would open up the call to everyone.
To recognize the time difference?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roach.
Thanks, Alex. Alex, just a question on how ABO selects certain groups for tenancy.
Yes, sure. The Meanwhile Space pilot is guided by an advisory committee. Some of them are delegating this evening. They represent many different artistic practices and lived experiences. So we do an open call. We try and make it barrier-free as possible with an expression of interest rather than an application. And then what we do is we take all those EOIs, we put them together, and we present them to the advisory committee, and we look at each one and assess based on the project and the need and the impact that those groups will have in the space. And part of that will be programming for the space for the community.
Councillor Bassing, did you have your hand up? Okay. I had a couple of questions. Can you help me to understand what, like, a lot of people have made reference to Gaukel Street as a programming space that's full. Do you anticipate similar types of uses within this space where there'd be like studios and maker spaces and workshops?
Absolutely. I think it will be dependent on what the community comes forward with. So while it's impossible to say what everyone in that neighborhood would be applying to use the space for, I would definitely envision a mixed-use space that supports visual arts, textile, quieter practices, along with production, louder production, so music and theater and dance, just to name a few. It would be multidisciplinary and a mixed-use site.
Can you help me to understand the studio space at the wing, like what the tenants are, what kind of uses that they have?
Sure. I mean, the one distinction about the two sites is their locations and ease of access with public transit or by cycling or by car. St. Columba is a little more central and easier to get to. Wing 404, I'm really excited at the opportunity to see what the community can activate at that side of Waterloo. But in terms of the two sites, both of them have performance space, but St. Columba with the sanctuary allows for more acoustics, more music activation to happen in that site, as well as rehearsals and performances. Wing 404, the stage structure is a little bit different, as well as the sound system there as well. So it's different amenities in each of the sites. And then we have a mixed use at Wing 404. I anticipate the same, but at St. Columba, it's interesting. You have two floors. The first floor, and so it being the sanctuary and the narthex, those could be used as short-term rental spaces or accessible studio space, depending on the expressions of interest we receive and the needs of those artists. And then the lower level would be used as long-term studio space.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think I just needed to provide some clarity. I know that it's looking at a net lease where you're paying some things, but the costs are clear. Like the city's paying $50,000 a year in operating and $350,000 in renovations to make that space available for you. So I think we need some clarity around that there is a financial implication to the city.
Sure.
So, thank you. Oh, sorry, Mayor McCabe. Yep.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for coming in, Alex, and explaining Arts Build Ontario. I'm curious, because you were saying, if I understood you, that Gaukel block is a kind of a model that you're using?
Like 44 Gaukel would be the model that we're using, and then the Gaukel block is the transformation as the example of what arts can do in an under-activated area.
Okay,
Yeah.
because, so I'm curious then about like, inside Gaukel block, how long the leases are there? Because you also indicated that there's low turnover. So I'm just curious, like, there's, how long the leases are, how you kind of manage, like, when, like, there's a limited amount of space, so how do you manage sort of the inflow, outflow? Like, is there sort of like a criteria or something that they have to meet before you say, you're graduated now, or how does that work?
It's a rolling lease, so they're one-year terms. And if they're still making use of the site, we just renew that lease or that license every year. So there's no, in that structure, there's no time limit. And then in terms of turnover, they give their typical notice as any license or lease structure would have. It's 30 days notice, and then we can bring in someone else who's looking for space in that time.
Okay, so like partly, I know it's different, but I'm just thinking, in my head, I'm thinking of like Communitech or Velocity, which brings in startups. And then when they get sort of to a certain success level, or they kind of graduate, if you will, to a scale up, or, they're seeing success in what they're doing, then they move out of that space. So that doesn't happen with the Gaukel block? Or
No.
you're not anticipating that happening with Wing 404?
We will do different terms with the Meanwhile Space pilots. The two projects are separate in their models and their structure. So 44 Gaukel is an example of what an arts hub can be in the long term in that 3-year structure. The Meanwhile Space pilot that we're doing right now with the other two sites have just 1-year terms. So we're dividing it into 6-month increments for each of the participants coming in. The structure for St. Columba, we were looking at more long-term security for the organizations that need space in that 3-year time to really incubate, which for any arts organization, that security in this time of precarity could be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess I'm wondering, so there's no sort of set length of time for the incubation then? It's like if you're in and you don't want to move, then you can stay. Is that?
I mean, so we would still work with staff to develop the model. Is that fair to say? Yes, we work with staff to develop the model to make sure that we're working in collaboration to ensure the goals of the program are met, as the city is our partners on this project. One of the visions is having that 3-year security for organizations, or at least having the space available for 3 years for organizations to use. So what those terms look like can be developed in collaboration with staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bassick.
Thanks, through you, Chair Freeman. I just wanted to kind of pull on Mayor McCabe's question a little bit, because I also kind of want to understand where you're going with this. Is the purpose, I'm just wondering where the overlap is between the purpose of an arts incubator versus the purpose of a tech incubator. And is the purpose of a tech incubator to get them to a certain position, maybe get them some venture capital funding so that they can launch and scale and insert other tech terms. But my impression would be that an arts incubator is maybe slightly different in that we don't have the same funding and weight behind the arts that we do with the tech sector. So it almost seems unrealistic to imagine that we might launch someone the same way we might in the tech sector. Is that kind of where you were getting at? So is that the goal of an arts incubator, to get them to a certain point to launch and become sort of like a really successful or world-class artist?
I mean, I can certainly speak to artists and arts organizations, and some who are here tonight who have grown at 44 Gaukel and their businesses. So they've increased their footprint in 44 Gaukel, for example. But the access to affordable space, it wouldn't be possible without that. The resources and the business models of nonprofit arts and creative industries are very different than the tech sector. It's under-resourced. So one of the things that we can do in partnership or in projects like Meanwhile Spaces or below market rental rates or models like that that we're seeing in other communities is ease that for the artists to then give them a chance to incubate in our own communities. That incubation can look different for the arts than it does the tech sector. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Through you, Chair, if I could just respond. I was not trying to compare the arts sector to the tech sector. I was just trying to think of an example where it's like that incubation where you bring people in. And really what I was wondering was, like, is there a point at which the artists move out of the Gaukel block or 404 ring to leave room for others to come in? That's really, because when you talk about space and access to affordable space being such a crucial piece of it, it's like, I'm concerned that the first people in, and if they don't move out, then we continue to have this challenge of space. So it's not trying to compare the two sectors at all. It was just like the moving through the space is really what I was trying to get at.
We will certainly endeavor to serve as many artists and organizations as possible with the site. That's a goal. We foresee, I see as many as 40 or 50 short-term renters using that sanctuary easily. And then in terms of the below basement area, at least 6 arts organizations can go down there. What those terms look like, we again are still developing what the impact number would be. We're curious to see what the community comes forward with and what programs they want to host in that site. And then in terms of the incubation, the 3-year period as well would allow for Arts Build Ontario to apply for funding to offer capacity building programs at that site, so it can effectively become an incubator for creative industries in this pilot period. So that's definitely on the table.
So I just thought of another question, sorry. In the studio spaces, it's not uncommon to use materials that need to have special ventilation to the outside. So how is that managed?
Oh, prohibited use. So we would have that in the lease or the license agreement in terms of the types of use that would be allowed on site.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, council? All right, great. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
So our next delegate is Sam Nabby. And if you could just state your name and municipality of residence, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Freeman and members of council. My name is Sam Nabby. I'm a resident of Kitchener. I'm also a member of the Community Advisory Committee for the Meanwhile Spaces. And I'm happy to speak tonight in favor of the staff report for a lease agreement here for St. Columba, and speak a little bit from my experience as an arts organizer throughout Waterloo Region. Over the past year, I have been project coordinator for a project called 1 Million Neighbors, which brought together 62 different nonprofits and community groups, including a large portion of arts groups and artists. About 100 participants in total. We held roundtable discussions throughout the region, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, townships, about what do we need to achieve a inclusive, resilient, and abundant community as our region grows. And this idea that we're going to hit 1 million people at some point in the next couple decades in Waterloo Region, and for the nonprofit sector, for artists, for community groups, what should our priorities be? So we had a vision document that came out of that whole process over the last year, and there was a lot that people had to say about art space and access to art space and support for artists. Some of the extracts here include seeking more resources for artists where they not only have access to space, but also ability to share materials, information, and have logistical support with arts administrators and fellow artists. So spaces like this that would allow people to collaborate informally and formally, be in studio spaces where various disciplines can cross-pollinate. This is stuff that has been bubbling up from the community conversations that I've been involved with. Also, there was a lot of emphasis put on the idea of building a career in the arts, all the way from education when you're a student in primary school or secondary school, what arts opportunities are available to you in terms of materials and programming and music classes and visual arts classes and supplies, all the way up to finding an affordable studio space like this to potentially becoming a successful commercial artist where you can build your career on a really solid foundation. So we do need support all the way through that journey for people's different career stages. And neighborhood scale art opportunities are really important, especially at that on-ramp when you're either a youth artist or you're in your first few years of being a practicing artist. These emerging artists really take advantage of the opportunities in our community, such as porch parties, neighborhood scale performances and outdoor gallery spaces, neighborhood matching grants for murals. These are really important ways for artists to build their career. So it was really great for me to see that there is support from the surrounding community in Lincoln Heights for this project, that people do want to see artists and art in their communities. And I believe that the St. Columba space could be a really important incubator and launching pad for artists in their early stage of their career. Audience development was also something that was really important and brought up in the 1 Million Neighbors process. So not only about providing space and opportunities for artists to do their thing, but the surrounding community being a part of that, and whether that looks like workshops or neighborhood scale events that are hosted potentially at this site, but again, also more generally throughout the year with things like porch parties. These are really important opportunities for neighbors to feel a sense of pride and civic identity and meet people in a different context and have this art space be a new part of their community that they're proud of as well. Artists are some of the most precariously employed people in our region when you look at StatsCan data from based on people's occupation. So again, the need for affordable space, the need for below market space, it is really, really needed. And that's true throughout career stages. The reality, speaking as someone who's mostly involved in the music side of the arts community, even very successful musicians who have been nominated for Junos or who have won a Juno or who are touring nationally are still working second jobs. It's not like they've achieved a level where they wouldn't necessarily need a space like this. So yeah, there's a huge need for affordable studio space, rehearsal space, all throughout that spectrum of career development. And 2 to 3 years can be a really crucial on-ramp of time for an emerging artist to develop their career, hone their craft, understand the funding landscape, get some grants under their belt, and build their audience. So I just want to reemphasize, artists make magic with so little. We've had many formal and informal meanwhile spaces throughout this community in the time that I've been a resident here, and whether it's people opening their homes for house shows, informal concerts where people can get experience performing, or meanwhile spaces programs like what's currently happening at 99 King in Kitchener and the Wing 404, to this space, but also places like Studio Fusion that operated for a couple of years in Kitchener. That was a development site that was vacant for a little while until it was activated by a community of artists who held really significant art interventions there. And whether it was for performance or studio space or rehearsal space for musicians, it was also a multidisciplinary space that unfortunately is now gone because the timeline for development has arrived and they've demolished that building and they're starting to build. So these spaces come and these spaces go, but having new ones become available is so important for this community. And then if artists do get a permanent space, that's when they can really have that stability to have a career that goes international. That we have artists from this community who, musicians from this community. I'm thinking of people like Alicia Brilla who have toured internationally, like Soft Cult, who have toured internationally and are building their fan bases and had their roots and started here in Waterloo region. So you'll notice that there are a few delegates, including myself, from Kitchener on here, and we see the value of a new art space in Waterloo, specifically because this is a regional ecosystem, whether it's KW, Cambridge, Guelph, Hamilton, the ability for people to have access to space and really plant their feet somewhere where they can be creative and expand their career is so important, and we will see the fruits of that. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any questions for Sam, Council? I guess, you're on the advisory committee. Can you help me to understand the kinds of uses that you've already permitted at the 404 wing? Maybe you can describe the artists that will be in there.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process being part of the advisory committee, and we had the two sites that we were working with, 99 King and 404, and we didn't know going into that process what uses would go in which building necessarily, but as the applications came in and we saw who was applying and which ones rose to the top, then we realized, okay, maybe Wing 404 would be better suited to music. There was a less concern about neighbors and noise with that location. So we looked at merit, we looked at quality first, and once those applications rose to the top, we said, okay, maybe this is a better use for this site, and maybe the visual art, for example, is a better use at 99 King. And other factors came into play there with the ability to have like a paint sink, for example, in the 99 King building. But really it was about trying to find what is the cohort of people that we think would work well together, just from a minimizing conflict perspective, but also maybe they could have some really great collaborations as they work in that space for 6 months at a time together.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions for the delegate? No, thank you so much. Helen Fiedler, welcome.
Hi, welcome. How are you?
We're good, thank you. Just your municipality of residence, please.
I'm in Ward 5, Lincoln Heights. And I actually didn't even know about this meeting until less than a week ago when it came to my attention. Having lived in the Lincoln Heights area across from Rosalie Park for the last 10 years, I got to know many, many of my neighbors and friends in the community. And one thing I found is that there are a lot of artists who live within walking distance of this church. It was one of the neighbors on Lincoln Road that mentioned to me about a year ago that there was a possibility that it might become an arts center, and that was extremely exciting to me. The reason I moved to the neighborhood was because I found a house with an in-law suite, and I live with my senior dad, who is an artist. He spends, I would say, 6 hours to 7 hours a week painting, and probably about 10 to 12 hours a week taking pictures of birds nearby. My neighbor 2 doors down is a beautiful fine art painter. My neighbor next door is the most beautiful woman on the planet, and she is an opera singer. And then in Jen's old house is an opera singer now too. There's just so many artists in our community. The last time I attended anything within walking distance of my house was many years ago. Somebody from the community hosted an art show at the Moses Springer Arena, and it was so well attended. It was rainy, it was cold, it was windy, and my dad's art was selling. He had 2 of his buyers happened to be university students, which I just thought was incredible, willing to take $50 to $100 out of their pocket and buy art. What an amazing thing. My background is also an artist, so I am a tenant at 44 Gaukel. It is the most well-run facility I've ever been in my entire life, and I'm not lying. It is so incredibly well-run. Helena sends us emails. Well, I've noticed some other Gaukel people. Helena sends us emails, updates, maybe 3 to 5 times a week, letting us know who's going to be in the big shared space, when we should be a little bit quiet for performances, key access things. I mean, they are so on top of the organization, the tenants, the community. I hosted an art show there 2 years ago. It was incredible how supportive they were, how they, showed me how to hang the art on the walls and how to sort of facilitate the event. Just having been there for the last 5 years as an artist, it has been one of the most transforming experiences of my lifetime. I am so thankful I got to be there. And interesting, I would have never been in there except for one of my clients, because I sell real estate. He's a starving artist, as the Arts Build kind of explains. He's the most amazing fine art artist I've ever seen in my lifetime. And he moved here from Toronto. He needed a studio space, but he couldn't afford the space on his own. So he pitched it to me. He said, "Could you share the space with me? And then I can afford it." And I said, "Absolutely." So I've been in there for 5 years with the most incredible artist. And we just share the space. And it's because even at below market rents, it's still sometimes hard for an artist to make a living and be a full-time artist. Growing up, my family traveled us all over Europe. We traveled all over Canada. Everywhere we go to art galleries. And, I always thought, why is Kitchener-Waterloo so boring? Like, it was always just this thing in my head. Like, I didn't understand why we don't look like Quebec. We don't look like, even Halifax, Nova Scotia has an amazing art gallery right in the center of town. And I'm just thinking, I want to see Waterloo look like some of these mainstream places we go to in the world. We are amazing for tech. We are amazing as far as a growing community. But in Waterloo, there's nothing walking distance from my house that we could go to and enjoy the arts. There's definitely nothing indoor other than if we were to rent, Moses Springer again. And I think that this is a completely amazing project that the city of Waterloo should definitely consider.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your comments. Was there any questions, Council? Councillor Bassett?
Thanks through you, Chair. That was great. You were nervous to start, but then you
I know, I felt really
got
nervous.
relaxed.
I've never actually been in this room, so I didn't know what to expect walking in.
Yeah, you settled into it nicely.
Okay.
I was curious what kind of art you do and what sparked your interest in applying to Gawkel in the first place.
Well, it was actually the roommate. So I sold him a condo. He moved here from Toronto. I saw his art and I was like blown away. And I've always painted, but at my own house or on kids' faces, because I did clowning for years, painting faces at, events. I always painted on canvases as well. And so when I saw his work and I saw, his drive to be a full-time artist as his career path, when he mentioned to me that there was studio space available, because it was during the first lockdown of 2020, and a few spaces came available, and he said, if you could share this space with me, I could afford it. And I said, absolutely, and we've been roommates ever since, and he's producing so much amazing art, and there's a art gallery in Ottawa that is now carrying his pieces. He's just a completely fantastic artist, and I am lucky to be there.
Thanks so much. I love that story because it also points to something Alex said, which is that what these spaces do is they bring people together, and those people can feed off of each other, and then it obviously grows and grows and grows. And I'm going to use this opportunity to say that on Thursday last week, I went to the Museum of Contemporary Art's talk with Sheila Hedy and Margot Williamson, which is very swoon-worthy for me. And you could see how, in action, how their friendship and their professional working, critiquing of one another, how they were able to build on that, how that builds more art, how that builds more social change, how that builds more just like fun and lightheartedness and at the same time seriousness about the world. It was really beautiful. And so your story captures what you said about how that happens. And that was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, and you just actually touched on something that was one of my thoughts I wanted to talk about today, if I could just take another minute. Scott Higgins is a big developer around Waterloo region. He developed many of the big condo complexes we see today, including a beautiful one in Cambridge that is...
Gaslight District.
The Gaslight District, correct. He was a co-author of a book called The Joy Experiment, and it's a fantastic book. If you ever get a chance to read it. One of the things that people know is that when you bring arts and culture into a community, you actually are creating the community. So without arts and culture in a community, you're not really an adequate community. And one other thought that I actually just thought of while saying that is that, we here have so many opportunities to kind of close the door to the arts, but when we open the door to the arts, we're also opening the door to not just the creativity, but the health and wellness of the community. I'm also the ambassador for Indwell, which is a deeply affordable housing, supportive housing community. And as their ambassador, they have sort of been training me on the things that they find value. And they won't build a building without a community center in the building because they know for health, wellness, and belonging, you need that sense of community. So even though it throws them way over budget every single time, they always add the community center because that is part of health, wellness, and belonging.
Right. Thank you so much. Mayor McCabe, did you have a question or?
Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment that because I'm sure if Councillor Rowe was here, who sits on the board of the Clay and Glass Museum, she would want to remind anyone listening that we do have some indoor art spaces, including the Clay and Glass Museum, which the city owns that building and Clay and Glass uses it. So, and there's also the KW Art Gallery, which is located in downtown Kitchener. But so just wanted to reference that as well. Thank you.
And of course, the Button Arts Factory. Yeah.
Arts Factory,
So-
yeah, absolutely, another
Yeah.
city-owned building, yeah.
Yeah, and we commit a tremendous amount of financial resources to art within the city of Waterloo. So it's not like it's off our docket. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's no more questions, so thanks very much. Okay, the next is a joint delegation, Andy Wright and Claire Donison. And it says that your area, your residence is Kitchener, is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Claire Donison. I'm a photographer and digital artist, and along with my partner Andy Wright, a performing arts photographer and artist, we've lived, worked, and created in this community for several years. We can say without hesitation that one of the biggest challenges artists face here is finding affordable, accessible space to do the work. We're also two of over 100 members of the Kitchener-Waterloo Society of Artists, a multicultural group with arts as diverse and unique as we are. Founded in 1931, CWASA is the oldest continuously operating arts organization in the region, and it's always thrived in shared creative spaces. For instance, they had a studio space just a year after they opened. They had a church where members painted, they taught, and exhibited their art. And then you all know the 15 years spent at what is now Button Factory Arts. That brief, very brief historic overview confirms something crucial. Artists don't just need space to make art, we need space to connect. And that's why we're here in strong support of the Meanwhile Spaces initiative, and specifically to advocate for the church to become a dedicated shared arts hub under the stewardship of Arts Build Ontario. The need is real, the demand is high. Artists often work alone, but we grow in community. Some challenges that I faced as an emerging artist were sort of covered already, but things like, how do I get my art framed, printed, what do I do? And Google and YouTube are, they can only do so much, and these things aren't learned in isolation. They were learned over coffee in a shared studio or from chatting with experienced artists at a show. Andy and I have been lucky to have been part of two communities that offered that kind of special support. First at Artscape Launchpad in Toronto, and more recently at 44 Gaukel. Some of our best ideas and collaborations came from casual conversations in shared kitchens, in tenant events, or just being nosy and peeking over someone's shoulder and asking some questions. We shared knowledge and tools and supplies. We bartered, we donated, we borrowed. We attended each other's shows and markets. We promoted workshops. We celebrated wins on social media. We made friendships, and we cared. That kind of environment is priceless and was very much fostered by Alex and the Arts Build team. St. Columba could bring that to life right here in Waterloo. And some of us visited last week, and it was palpable already, the energy and excitement about bouncing ideas. What could this space be? There's transit nearby, there's parking, there's green space, and most importantly, for someone like me, it is accessible. I'm mobility challenged, and for someone who has a mobility device, or even a mom or dad who has a stroller, it is accessible. And that alone significantly improves access and inclusion. So we know this council and the region you recognize the importance of investing in the arts, and there are ample opportunities to exhibit and share our art and to participate in festivals and events. This is a chance to support the part people don't always see: the making, the mentoring, and the community building. Artists bring joy, we inspire connection, we attract visitors, we create jobs, we build culture. But before we can offer that to the public, we need a place to create, a space to make, to gather, to grow, and thrive together. Now Eddie has to continue.
Hello. I have been a photographer and visual artist for almost 2 decades now. I've had studios in different cities, and for many years I worked hard in my own silo trying to gain artistic ground. I became commercially successful as a photographer, but over time the artistic well of inspiration no longer had a bucket at the end of the rope. So finding an outlet for creativity at 44 Gaukel under the leadership and guidance of Alex and the Arts Build Ontario team has been a lifeline. It allowed me to rediscover and reinvigorate who I am and what I do as an artist. The encouragement and shared energy of those around us within the building truly refueled our artistic souls and helped Claire to secure the only augmented reality interactive art piece on the Gaukel block and several large pieces on long-term display at the Barrow Kitchen restaurant. It has helped me to become an award-winning artist. It has helped me to run successful workshops, and it has helped our mutual involvement in both Quissa and Grace, garnering our respective achievements in having pieces displayed in numerous shows and premises around the KW region and beyond in the last 5 years. And Also, ArtsBuild facilitated our inclusion in the hugely successful Doors Open, which brought hundreds of inquisitive, appreciative minds into the studios of all at 44 Gorkle. We often talk about infrastructure as simply roads and buildings, but creative spaces are vital infrastructure too. They're the invisible scaffolding that supports the mental health and well-being of both creatives who make art and the curious who buy it and appreciate it. Undoubtedly, one of my proudest moments was when ArtsBuild brought together 30 mayors from across Canada to visit the Gorkle block. Having them in our studio, looking at our art, asking us questions about what inspires us, how we do what we do, it was absolutely incredible. But what resonated most was hearing them repeatedly say again and again how much they wished their own communities had something similar. So thank you for considering this proposal, not just as a space solution, but as a bold investment in artists, in community, and in the creative growth of this region. It behooves us as a city to ensure that we have a firmly rooted foundation with broad, strong shoulders upon which others across Canada can stand as they build their own collectives and creative spaces. Waterloo region is now famously known as the Silicon Valley of the North. What you have the opportunity to support here has the potential to position us as Canada's arts and ideas incubator. Because Waterloo isn't just about coding anymore. This is where tech meets art. It is a launchpad for innovative creativity where microchips and masterpieces can coexist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, council? Seeing none, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The next delegate is Ben and Gordeski. I'm not sure if I said your last name right.
That's pretty close.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Ben, and can I just trouble you to say your municipality of residence?
Absolutely. My municipality of residence is Kitchener, and my last name is pronounced Gorodetsky. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to delegate, and thank you for your continued emphatic and wide-reaching support of the arts. It's seen, it's felt, and it's appreciated tremendously in the arts community by myself personally and other humans beyond the edge of me. I come wearing two hats, as an independent artist and as the director of Pinch Arts, which is a nonprofit organization that is generously supported by the City of Waterloo and by other arts funders. So I'm gonna ping pong between those two different hats. So as an independent artist, I'm currently benefiting from the Meanwhile Spaces program. As people have said repeatedly, it is an incredible opportunity for studio space, and it's essential to seeding and developing all those artistic projects, and those projects that aren't just for the 6 months that they're in residence or in studio. Those are like multi-year cycles that are being started as part of this opportunity. Again, it's been said, but ArtsBuild Ontario is very, very good at what they do. They're incredible communicators, they're organized, they're detailed, and they understand the arts and can support the needs that are quite varied across different disciplines and across different personalities. I just want to throw my emphatic support behind ArtsBuild as like the perfect candidate to lead this project. Now, other hat is Pinch Arts. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the essential role that 44 Gawkel, the ArtsBuild Ontario administered space, played in the founding and in the growth of our nonprofit. So just a tiny bit of background, Pinch Arts runs 2 monthly performance series. We present hundreds of artists, individual artists every year, thousands of audience members. It's great, we have fun. The shows Pinch Cabaret and Together We're Boisterous are important parts of the local arts ecology, in my opinion, but that's not what I want to tell you about. What I wanted to say was that in addition to producing the shows with platform artists, which is fine and dandy, we also offer classes for the public at large. These classes are in improvisation, in storytelling, in writing, in movement, and then various kind of like niche one-offs as they come up. The classes are for adults, and last year we've had over 600 participants in 45 classes. Some of those are like 4-week classes, so it's a lot of people, a lot of classes. So, but back in 2021, we were just getting started, and at that time we were able to rent accessibly priced studio space at 44 Gaukel, thanks to Arts Build Ontario's work to provide that affordable space for artists, and we continued to use that space for many, many years. And those classes attracted quite a wide variety of participants. People, from students who are just in search of creative expression, to other folks who sought collaboration, to other folks who needed community connection. There's many different reasons why someone takes a class as an adult on a weeknight. So just to name a few folks, not by name, but by profession. We've had senior data scientists from Google, professors from both the University of Waterloo and Laurier, senior executives from Desjardins Insurance, researchers and postdoctoral fellows from the Perimeter Institute, numerous healthcare professionals, and countless other people. These folks, specifically, are the ones whose day jobs form the backbone of Waterloo's economy. These are visible, important companies that have established Waterloo as a global city and a hub for innovation. However, I would argue that the access to creative and artistic experiences outside of work hours is what makes those individuals love and connect to this city, Waterloo. And the other thing to consider is that those, successful in their careers folks are not, they don't make up the whole of the student base. Quite intentionally. The diversity of the classes is what makes them attractive to participants. We have recent university grads, we have blue-collar workers, we have retired folks, we have low-income participants, and that interesting mix within these classes where we are working on storytelling and improvisation, and et cetera, that's what makes them special. And so having access to that affordable art space is what allows us to keep the prices for the classes low, and thereby being able to welcome a wide diversity of participants and creating that dynamic third space for all of the community members who benefit from those classes. So all of this is to say that the affordability of the art spaces is, I think, essentially tied to the economic and social health of Waterloo. That spaces and programs that Arts Build Ontario stewards stimulate the creative economy, which in turn has meaningful and tangible impacts on the wider economy of the region. And so, in summary, I implore you to support Arts Build Ontario's bid to run an art space at St. Columba. It's a small price to pay when you remember that the success of socio-cultural spaces is essential to the success of economic and corporate spaces within our city, as well as myriad other spaces that I don't know the names of. So thank you for the time to speak.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time to come out this evening. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you so much. And now for Judy Hall is a director with CAFCA. And Judy, you have 5 minutes. And you can lower the podium if it's an uncomfortable height.
Really?
There's a little button on the right-hand side. Yeah.
Ooh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And your municipality of residence is Kitchener, is that correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Bear with me while I read off my laptop. So I'm speaking on behalf of myself, much like Ben, wearing 2 hats, as both a visual artist and on behalf of the organization I work for, CAFCA, Contemporary Art Forum Kitchener and Area, which is a visual arts producer and artist-run center based in Kitchener with exhibition reach across Waterloo region. So CAFCA, I like to explain to people, is an art gallery without an art gallery. We don't have a brick and mortar exhibition space as we present contemporary artworks by taking them outside of the gallery and into publicly accessible spaces. And we rely on relationships that we cultivate within private and public sectors in the Tri-Cities to exhibit such artworks. CAFCA is very motivated to see more art spaces throughout Waterloo region, but particularly in Waterloo, as I can speak from recent professional experience, programming the currently running Kafka 25 Field Guide to the Understory, which I'm exhibiting right now on my t-shirt, the biennial exhibition. I had more trouble citing artworks and finding fabrication and rehearsal spaces in Waterloo this year than anticipated. This was even noticed in my community. As I presented my exhibition plan at our AGM back in April of this year, one of my more astute members noticed that we had many more exhibition sites in Cambridge than we normally do and fewer in Waterloo than in past years. Given that Kitchener and Waterloo are adjacent and overlapping cities, we typically have a stronger presence in Waterloo. However, throughout the summer, we're making up for the fewer than usual exhibition spaces with more activations and outreach programming in Waterloo. But part of this in terms of like citing exhibition space and fabrication and programming spaces can be luck of the draw. Once every 2 years, Kafka reaches through our network to find homes for artworks that are mutually beneficial to Kafka, the exhibition space, and the artwork. This year when I reached into Waterloo, I knew or assumed, for example, that the Button Factory had enough on its plate. I almost worked something out with the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery that's still kind of on the table, but it didn't come to fruition at the time that we were hoping. And I knew that my colleagues at the University of Waterloo Art Gallery and Longhouse Labs would be on board to collaborate, but I found myself coming up a bit empty-handed when rifling through my roster of arts-friendly, publicly accessible spaces in Uptown or in surrounding communities. And I'd also like to mention that this was despite the combined efforts of myself and JS at Uptown BIA, who met with me and supported my art citing and production efforts. So having a space like St. Columba Church dedicated to arts programming and administered by a trusted and reliable organization like ArtsBuild would make for an ideal space for Kafka to collaborate with. Each year it feels as though art spaces across the region are dwindling in either their physical presence or are limited in their capacity to support artists. And while Kafka primarily presents a biennial exhibition of temporary contemporary art in publicly accessible spaces, we are also always looking for arts-friendly spaces to host other community connection and enrichment activities, such as special exhibitions, performances, big idea and art and culture lectures, artistic and professional development workshops, and artist gatherings. So I mentioned that I was here as both a representative of Kafka and as a visual artist myself, and as an artist and reformed worker in STEM. I was luckily included on the independent research project funded by the City of Kitchener, which resulted in the Uncovering Barriers report published in 2024. My colleagues and fellow artists Brenda Mabel Reed and Cheryl G. Smith investigated sources of barriers experienced by artists living and working in Waterloo Region, and access to space was the third highest reported barrier, following access to funding and access to information. When describing the spaces artists needed access to, it was overwhelmingly studio space and exhibition space that they cited, with a smaller but very significant need for community and gathering spaces. As access to these spaces is already limited and possibly decreasing, and as my colleagues have already mentioned, Globe Studios, that's where the Kafka office is, and where I personally, as a visual artist, have been on the waiting list maybe 2 years. I get no special treatment, and that's ethical. And where I have my own studio. I do have a studio I share with my partner near the corner of Park and Victoria, which is a building that's of course slated for demolition to make way for condos. And then Studio Fusion, as Sam mentioned, it was a loan space from Vive Development that offered a similar operating model to Meanwhile Spaces, and Kafka made great use of this space during its 2023 to 2024 lifespan by holding the Kafka 23 Artist Party, community critiques, the Kafka Strategic Planning Meeting, and other members of the community also hosted art sales, dances, performances, and it offered flexible art spaces for 3 to 5 artists in the loft.
So I just wanted to let you know that your time is up.
Oh, do you want me to stop? I can stop. I have one more paragraph, but I think it's kind of nice.
Okay, let's hear your last
Okay,
paragraph.
double time. Okay. Having an arts-dedicated space at St. Columba Church helps arts organizations like Kafka reach into a community with limited proximal access to cultural spaces that are welcoming art spaces in their neighborhoods. On Friday, June 13th, many of us delegates toured the site and congregated on the front lawn, where we were approached by a neighbor from across the street wondering what we were up to. When we explained our hope for the building, nameless resident with a door color that I won't mention welcomed our intentions with open arms, citing her own wish and the wish of 44 of her neighbors who had recently signed a petition for more art spaces in their community. And it just felt really good to bring art where it's actually wanted.
That's great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Any questions for the delegate? Jen?
Thanks through you, Chair Freeman. I mean, you're so funny.
Oh,
That was great.
Funnier than Ben.
He's also very funny.
He's a
Yeah, but
trained-
I
he's a
already knew
professional
that. I
person.
didn't know
Okay,
that about
yeah.
you. I just wanted, a couple of you have mentioned about the signatures and the support from the neighborhood. And while signatures don't always indicate a good use of, or don't always help make a well-informed decision because they're often in opposition to change. What's really beautiful about these signatures, which actually have reached upwards of maybe almost 80 plus, yeah, is that it's for something, and I think that's really beautiful. So I just wanted to make sure we know that it's double what the two delegates have mentioned, and that it's really beautiful that it's for something. So thanks for pointing that out again, and for your hilarity.
Thank you. Try and keep it light.
Thank you.
All right.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. Then next delegates are Sarah Romborg, Vincent Malone, and Sarah Midnight. And you have 5 minutes as a combined delegation. And just confirmation that your municipality of residence is Kitchener, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Well, welcome.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I am both Sarah Rombo and Sarah Midnight, and I also go by Habby. I am a person of several names, but you can refer to me as Habby for simplicity's sake. I am the owner of Midnight Raven Studios, and I also both run the Witch and Wellness Markets in Kitchener and the Midnight Earth Markets in Kitchener. Working in a space like 44 Gaukel not only enabled me to make my full-time work art, but it has helped me to build a community and help find other artists and help them build their full-time careers as well. ArtsBuild has been instrumental in fostering this community through 44 Gaukel through facilitating opportunities like in-person connection and collaboration, making it feel like this building really has our back for things and what we are trying to create in the community. Within my 3 years at 44 Gaukel, or slightly under 3 years at 44 Gaukel, I have been able to grow my small fledgling business into a thriving business that supports not only myself, but one full-time employee and one part-time employee as well. This would have been significantly more difficult to do had I had to pay regular priced rents. I would not have been able to afford it at the time. And my basement had some constraints as well. The support of ArtsBuild has been instrumental in growing this from the start. Through Gaukel, I was also able to create both of my events in which I have been told by several of my vendors have enabled them to pursue their work full-time as well. This also gives them an incredible dedicated community through these spaces without being a full-time tenant. Many of my regular vendors are also disabled folks who otherwise would not be able to pursue normal jobs and would have a lot of time being this independent on their own. I think I have about 60% of my vendors that are disabled and are not otherwise able to pursue full-time work on their own. The arts not only brings a little bit of whimsy to the surrounding community, but the arts also brings inspiration, connection, and economic development to the surrounding community through avenues such as the events that Vincent and I both have created. If we want the arts in our communities, we have to make space for it, and that's why I think it's important for us to pursue projects such as this.
Oops. My name is Vincent Marconi. My artist name is My Pet Skeleton. I've been doing it for 25 years. And I'm here to talk a little bit how 44 Gaukel helped connect me to my community. So back in 2017, I was in this weird limbo. I was doing fairly well in my career. I had a couple of nice shiny awards with the National Film Board and a couple of record labels, but I was totally disconnected from my local community. I missed that scrappy, collaborative vibe that I had back in art school at Conestoga College and the University of Waterloo. But around my community, my neighborhood, there really wasn't anything. There was no scene, there was no buzz, there were no weirdos, until now, to collaborate with. And even though I grew up here, I somehow never really plugged in. I seriously considered packing up and moving to a bigger city, like a lot of my creative friends had already done. But before I bolted, I figured I'd give it one last shot. Maybe I could actually help build something here. So I reached out to ArtsBuild, and they offered me a space at 44 Gaukel. They said you'd be a great fit and promised to help make some local connections for me. Just being around other creatives, even just chatting in the hallway made a huge difference, and suddenly I wasn't so isolated. After the first year, I started hosting little open studio events during the holidays, sold some work, had some people over, served some questionable eggnog. It was great. One thing that I always wanted here in the city was to find something that was curated, that had that had thematic markets and gallery shows, weird, wild, and wonderful. It just didn't exist at the time. So if it doesn't exist, I thought maybe I'd try help and make it. So I launched Crumpus Kindle, the KW Night Market, and again, Habby and Sarah has done these amazing events along my side too. They've grown into full-blown events with city support, amazing crowds, and around 35 vendors who also lean into the darker side of things, excuse me, and make good money while doing so. Through ArtsBuild, I was introduced to key people in the city, which led to The Beasting, which is a collaborative arts initiative that kept many artists engaged during the pandemic, and is still going strong today. I can honestly say that none of this would have happened without the one little space, without that little studio space and a friendly nudge from ArtsBuild. Artists need places to work and people to connect with. We need more of these kind of spaces in every city. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Is there any questions for the delegates? Great, thank you. Okay, Council, I wanted to give Council an opportunity to ask any questions of staff that they might have. Any questions for staff? I had a question for staff. I was looking at listening to all of the things that we've heard today, how this space would like to be used and the other spaces that are currently being used. It got me worried that maybe the property isn't zoned for these permitted uses. And so I wanted to get some information around that. 44 Gaukel is zoned for craftsperson shop, artisan establishment, creative industry uses, and the wing, commercial uses, makerspace, workshop neighborhoods, and events. Mr. Ormson, can you provide some insight on this?
Through you, Chair Freeman, to yourself on the question. That's a good one, Councillor Freeman. I haven't had a chance to examine the zoning framework in that level of detail. I do know it's zoned low-density residential or residential 1 right now. I also know in our zoning bylaw, we do define studio A and B classifications, which speak to things like, odors and noise and, the different things that could come with different types of studio use. Generally speaking, for land uses that would be defined as the city offering a public service, we're generally not, the city and the region are generally not subject to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, but in this case, without seeing the details of the leases and the particular uses, I think staff would need to take that offline to make a proper determination.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I'd like to just turn the chair over to the mayor if I could, because I'd like to actually move a motion to defer the decision on this matter to next week for a number of reasons. One, today we've heard a lot of information with regard to budget pressures that are coming up for this year and next that are quite significant. This is a piece that will require budget to fund. It'll require an upwards of $500,000, and the renovation of the space will actually cost more money than if we just rented the equivalent space in a commercial area. And then we could advance the other plans for this property. And another question, in addition to the zoning question that I just asked, is that in my career as someone who works in the development industry, it's my understanding that when you shift uses from a sensitive use like a church or a residence to a more commercial use, which is clearly what this would be, that it also would trigger the requirement for a record of site condition to occur for us to actually convert it back to an affordable housing use. and securing a record of site condition could be a very, very costly endeavor. So I think we need some more information on this, and I'm hoping that someone would be willing to second a motion to defer to next week. Hopefully, we can get some information. I'm not trying to delay this decision. I'm trying to get to an informed decision. Is there a seconder? Oh, sorry,
thank you.
I'll turn it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So, yeah, thank you. I'm happy to chair this part of it. There's the deferral motion that clerks just put up there. Does that capture what you were?
Yep.
Okay. So that's been moved by Councillor Freeman. Before we open any discussion, is there someone willing to second this? Councillor Roach? Okay, so this motion is on the floor, so we'll look to see if anyone has questions, comments.
I think I'd just like a recorded vote, if that's okay.
And you'd like a recorded
Clerk?
vote?
Yeah.
Is there? Okay. Okay, so the questions, thanks for the clerk for reminding me. The questions, or comments, if you do have them, need to be scoped just to the deferral motion here. We're not going to, when this is on the floor, we're not actually going to talk about the lease or Arts Build or St. Columba. It's just the motion on the floor here. So does anyone have any comments or questions? Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Mayor McCabe. Would we be able to ask our Director of Planning, who has quite substantial knowledge on our zoning, if he might be able to speak to this with enough well information looking at our zoning map tonight? Is that one of the things we could get some clarification on tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Cotter.
Through Chair Freeman to Councillor Vasek, as Mr. Ormson indicated, we would need to see the specifics of the use, but there is a public service provision in the bylaw that allows a general exemption for the city to provide a public service. So again, depending on how this is structured, it's potentially possible that the use may fall within that exemption. Alternatively, it would be a situation where the city would look to pass a temporary use bylaw, which could allow for a temporary 3-year permission on the property that would not require necessary compliance with the official plan.
Okay, sorry. The clerk was just saying that the motion really needs to be scoped to deferral, yes or no. Although, do you want to speak to that maybe, Julie? Because I found this a little bit confusing because the zoning and land use considerations are written into the motion. So could you just explain your procedurally there? What's in and what's out?
Sure, thanks. Mayor, Talib, Council, so at this time, the motion on the floor is, do you want to defer considering this report until next week? And so it's not sort of then going back into talking about the use. It's just, do you feel the need tonight to defer this decision and the vote on that? And then depending on the outcome of that vote, then we'll get to the next stage. That helps.
Okay, thanks, Julie. So I guess we'll keep comments just if you have them, just specifically about whether or not, how you feel about the motion, which is about deferring it. So I don't know, Councillor Vasek, if you had a follow-up.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor. If we were to defer this, and over the course of however long we're waiting for the deferral, we learned that there were incompatible land use considerations, what might be our course of action? And would you even suspect that we would have incompatible land use considerations given what is going into the area? And we may need the Director of Planning to say what an incompatible land use consideration may be.
I'm just going to say.
Point of order, this is all the information that I'd like to see brought back to us. There's a whole bunch of pieces.
Councillor Freeman, I was just about to jump in. So I think, again, we just need to talk about whether we're deferring it or not. My understanding is a deferral would be until, to the next regular council meeting. And so then we would have staff bring that additional information back.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
I don't know how to ask this. Is this an in good faith request?
Is this a
Is
good-
this request for a deferral in good faith?
I'm going to look to the clerk and ask if that's a question that actually can be answered. I mean, I would take it in good faith that, that Councillor Freeman has tabled this. As she said, we all know that we've heard a variety of information about the budget today. And so there was a lot of information provided about the development, through the development charges workshop and things like that. So I'm going to say that this is in good faith to say, let's, give ourselves 6 days to absorb that information, that we've just learned, and to think about it and ask some more questions of staff, and then come back at our next council meeting, which is currently scheduled for June 23rd, so a week, to discuss this further. Did you want to add something, Julie?
Just to note that, at any meeting in any report, council at any time could move a motion for deferral. Yeah, and then at that point, it's just based on the reasons that have been put forward. Do you want to defer it? Yes or no?
Thank you, Clerk. Councillor Hanmer, did I see your hand go up before? Okay, and then we'll get to you, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We have had a lot of different information provided that I think is relevant and pertinent to this particular issue. And as much as I really like supporting the arts, I would like a little bit more time to consider what we've heard today, and I do have a number of other questions that have arisen. So I would be supporting deferring it till our next meeting of next Monday.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe. I'm going to take a stab at a comment that's maybe a question.
As long as it's scoped to the deferral.
While feeling like I'm somewhat muzzled here. I'm not really sure what we are deferring this for. Back in February, Council unanimously approved the following: a $2.9 million land acquisition, confirmation that we would do the capital improvements on the site, solid and complete and well thought through funding sources for the purchase of the property, the interim use, and the capital improvements. And we also approved a temporary use for up to 3 years for this art space. During that meeting, I do not recall any questions about zoning, about funding, about any of this, frankly. And so what we have before us today is a follow-up report from that unanimously approved council decision asking us to approve a lease. And so in my mind, if we're considering deferring it, it would be because there are concerns with the lease. I don't see any concerns with the lease. This is, as was noted, a trusted and reliable partner, Arts Build Ontario.
Okay, but
we have.
just keep your comments about the deferral here, in support or against the deferral.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep my comments about the defer, Mayor, sorry. I'm trying to keep my comments about the deferral while speaking to why I think the deferral does not make sense. The deferral does not make sense in my mind because what is before us today is a thoughtful staff report that's well-researched with a trusted and reliable partner in Arts Build Ontario who has a proven model in the community. And that's what we should be asking ourselves if we want to defer. Otherwise, in my mind, we should be reconsidering that decision from February. And I'm not in a position where I'd be willing to support any sort of reconsideration. And so what I'm being asked to do today as a councillor is to support a deferral, and I don't see the justification for that deferral. The deferral, in my mind, and it's really, really frustrating, if I may, to say that council cannot speak to all of the reasons why we approved this back in February unanimously. And it's also particularly frustrating in my mind to have significant community support come out here and speak to why this project is so important and then say, yeah, thanks, come back next week. So in my mind, I'm not going to support the deferral because the deferral is frivolous in my mind. It doesn't speak to what the report is that's before us today.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. sorry, I was just, thank you, Councillor Bodley. I can appreciate that this is frustrating, but in terms of like what we can speak to and what we can't speak to, that's really a matter for the clerk. I mean, there's procedures that we have to follow. So those are the constraints under which we're, that we're working. So Councillor Hanmer? Oh, no, okay. Councillor Vasek.
Thanks. I'll punctuate some of the comments that Councillor Bodley has said, and then I have a couple others to highlight. I think what is most important is this is not new information to us today. The fact that we're claiming it is made up. We have had a year and a half to consider this since this came from community, this community-initiated decision. There were several opportunities for us to defer this, to flag any potential considerations that could have stopped us from needing a deferral. And this is where my was this in good faith question comes from. So this is not new information we are receiving. Several departments at the city have seen this come forward, and not one has flagged substantial concerns that may or may not come up over the next week. I can't speak to that because we're only voting on the deferral. I think there are, based on emails that I've seen go back and forth, potentially this deferral is to speak to the fiscal concerns, but it is fiscally and organizationally responsible for us to make a unanimous decision and stick behind it unless there is something glaringly facing us that should force us to change our minds. In February, it was 2.9 million, that's right, and there are funding sources for this. This is not new funding that is needed, and it comes from 500,000 from Council's Community Priority and Contingency Reserve, the Affordable Housing Program, 1.65 million from Uptown land sale proceeds, and 750,000 from the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve. So there's no increase to our tax bills that are going to come, and because we're supposed to be fiscally responsible, I suspect that may be a concern. So I just want to point to that being, if that's in anybody's mind, potentially, that this is fiscally irresponsible, it's actually fiscally very responsible. We are demonstrating to the community and staff that they can trust us with our decisions and that the information that they bring to us is true and accurate and reliable. And by sending them back today, we are telling them we don't think that's true. And so is that in good faith, or is there something else like underlying these concerns? I don't know from other people's perspectives. So I think what we are communicating is that the arts don't matter that much to us.
Sorry, Councillor Vasek. I just want you to keep it to the deferral.
A deferral communicates to the arts community that they do not matter to us, that the arts do not matter to us. This is a decision we unanimously made. There is tons of support here supporting this. And I think it's quite clear what's being asked of us here today, and I will absolutely not support a deferral. I am embarrassed by the fact that we're asking for one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vasek. Councillor Freeman.
For clarity, I supported the motion in February because I support the use of this site for affordable housing.
Again, we're just speaking to the deferral.
Well, the question was asked, what's new information? What's new information is
But we're still just keeping our comments to the deferral.
But the new information's not related. It's related to our overall budget. And while we chose in February to dip into reserve funds, the question now is, was that the right thing to do? And that's what I'm trying to get more information on. That's the new information that came this week and is coming tomorrow. And that's the information I think we need to ruminate on. It is a terrible thing to suggest that we don't support the arts when we commit $1.7 million every year to arts in the city of Waterloo, and we're giving another equivalent of $400,000 through a zero lease at the 404 wing. So it's not appropriate to say that we don't support art. I absolutely support art. I am an artist. And you know, I buy local art, I go to
Okay,
local art.
we're just going to keep it to the deferral.
It's just,
I know we all, yeah.
yeah,
I just want
I
to
mean,
keep it scoped
I
here.
want more information. I'm trying to get to yes.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Any other comments? Okay, so seeing no further, Councillor Bodley.
The commentary is around the further consideration of financial information piece of this deferral.
The commentary needs to stay to just the deferral, supporting it or not supporting it.
I'm speaking to the further consideration of the financial information piece. This is the part that I guess is the greatest tension for me, is there's no further consideration of any financial information that we have not already approved. If staff were coming to us today and saying, you know what, that 500K from CCPCR or the 750K from TRS, it's not sufficient, we get a lease here, and the only way we can do this is if we get more money from those sources, that would be further consideration of financial information. Suggesting that council is receiving broader budgetary consideration that impacts this relatively small amount, to me suggests that council cannot make any decisions on any budgetary piece, including the $20–30 million piece that we're going to be talking about shortly. I don't understand how broad budgetary considerations are justification for a deferral of, frankly, a very small number. And I'm seeking to see if we have any feedback for why the city's overall financial purse here has any bearing on how that is new financial information that would justify deferring an already approved project that's not asking for more money. We could do this all day long with every single project that comes to council, every single time. So I'm looking for some clarification on what new financial information justifies deferring a decision that's not asking for new finances.
So, sorry, I was just looking, I was just communicating with the clerk there. Do you want to respond to that, Julie?
Sure, and through the mayor to council, I can appreciate that this feels frustrating. But the premise is that if any member of council feels like they want an item deferred because they need more information, it doesn't, it's not relevant if you disagree with their feelings. It isn't. It's a yes or no vote. Do you feel the same way that you need more information in order to make this decision? And if you feel like you also need that more information, then you will vote yes. And if you feel like you don't need that information, you will vote no.
Okay.
And so I think this is where it's getting complicated, because this is a procedural requirement. When a councillor moves a deferral motion, that gets considered before the substance of the report. So I really do appreciate how it feels awkward to speak to this and to ask the questions, but it's really not a matter of the topic. It's that one member of council feels that they would like a deferral and they've received a seconder, and then you will vote on that and then move forward.
Okay, based on that, then clerk, would it be appropriate at this point to call the question rather than continue to have comments?
I would suggest that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Vasek?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I just would like to have a clarification about the process. Typically, when we have a mover and a seconder, we then go on to debate the motion
Which
before
we're
us.
having, yeah.
And so, we are. We're
Yeah.
trying to. It's awkward. We don't really know how to do it because we haven't ever faced this before, as far as I can remember.
Well, we're having comments and questions back and forth now, so that is debate, yes. We're doing that right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I wasn't asking about the definition of a debate. I was asking about that we haven't done this sort of deferral before. So that's the awkward part, I think. So I guess my question is, I don't know, our deferrals, you just say deferral. you provide the reason why you want the deferral, and then everyone just has to right away say yes or no without debating it and putting in their reasons for not having the deferral?
Through the mayor to the council, but no, as the mayor stated, the questions and the comments are based on whether to defer it or not. But the questions that have been asked are actually asking for the answers that Councillor Freeman has asked to come back next week. So it's fine to have a comment, for example, that you don't feel that there is new information, and so that you don't maybe feel the need for the deferral. That's fine. But when it starts going, trying to get the answers that are actually being asked for next week, then that's like beyond just the debate of the deferral. Yeah, so I know it is a little bit awkward.
Okay, last time, Councillor Bodley.
This is a point of clarification to the clerk, maybe, so that I can be confident in a comment that I would like to make. So, to Councillor Vasik's point, we're debating right now whether or not we should defer this motion, yes or no. So if I want to make the case that, no, we should not defer this for X, Y, and Z reason, I can make that comment, as long as I'm not asking points of clarification around these two pieces. Okay, well, I would like to do that, because I don't think I've had the chance to do that.
I thought you just did, but go ahead. I thought you did in your previous comments, but go ahead.
So the reason why I'm not going to support the deferral, aside from the fact that I don't need any additional information in order to be able to do this, is because of the fact that while we have funding concerns, and I appreciate that we have those funding concerns, this does not represent any direct tax increase at all to constituents. It's a $500,000 amount coming from our council contingency reserve. It's not a 0.5% tax increase as has been portrayed, it's a 0% tax increase. And not only that, the financial considerations are not even really, in my mind, being represented here appropriately, because we are not committing a future council to any decision on the financial piece today, should we approve this lease. If we were to approve the lease, the council of the day, 3 years from now, can make a decision around their finances. They can make a decision to sell the property at full market value. They can make a decision to meet the priorities of the community when it comes to affordable housing. Indeed, they could make the decision to keep the community art space as part of a new development. So a future council is well equipped to handle those. When we talk about the financial implications here, I think it's really important to note, Councillor Freeman had noted that we spend $1.7 million on arts and creative industries. Well, that's 1.7% of our operating budget. It is a relatively minor amount when you compare it to things like $23 million for fire rescue, $10 million for facilities, $9 million for transportation. And I think that it is dangerous for us at council here to be pitting different departments against one another when it comes to prioritizing the council purse strings here. Arts and creative industries does really important work, and I know that council knows that, including Councillor Freeman, and I appreciate where she's coming from when it comes to these funding concerns. But when we look at that $1.7 million, we can look at a significant amount of that going towards Lumen. Lumen had 37,000 participants the day of, 50,000 people who engaged with the long-term art projects of the month, and had a conservative estimate of $7.6 million of economic impact on a not even a $1.7 million investment. That's the whole department. And I want to also highlight that when it comes to the financial considerations, something else that we should be considering is, interestingly enough, and I won't out who this artist is, but last week after council, I was sitting on the patio, and I had an artist come up to me, and we were talking about whether they intended to stay or leave in the region, because I had previous conversations with them that they were leaving the region. And they said, no, they've decided that they're going to stay because the arts community here is so vibrant, as we see in the audience here this evening. And when those people stay, that has financial implications to the community. Those people stay, they pay property taxes, they pay their stormwater fee, that allows us to contribute to our infrastructure investment, and ensures that our collective basements don't flood, it ensures that we can pay for roads, etc. And so I think the portrayal of the tax considerations and the budgetary constraints that we are going to be facing is overblown. I am concerned that we are talking about a 0% tax increase and providing the level of scrutiny we're going to provide to this that I've frankly never seen in anything this small that's come to council in my 6 years on council. And so that is why I don't support the deferral from a financial consideration. I have all the financial information that I need. I had it all back in February. And in my mind, nothing has changed here from a staff perspective to justify why we would need to defer this lease agreement.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Okay, so we have had comments and some debate. So we have a mover and a seconder, so I will call the question. And it's a recorded vote. Yes, so we need to do this one by one.
Or if people can just keep their hands up so that we can record it.
Okay, so we'll just keep, just let me call it. So we'll do it, just keep your hand up a little longer than we normally do, so the clerk can record it. So all in favor of the motion, which is to defer this for a week? Okay, all opposed to the deferral? Okay, thank you, Council. I'll hand the chair back to you, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. So we're moving on to item 10B, award of tender for Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive reconstruction. There's a recommendation in your packet. Is there any questions, Council? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Roach. All those in favor? It's carried. So we are on to 10C, declaration of surplus city-owned lands in Waterloo Town Square parking lot. Do I have a mover? Oh, did you have comments on this, Mayor McCabe?
No, just to say that I'm really pleased to have this coming to council, and we're pleased, we're appreciative of the work that staff have put into this, and of the developers we work through this process.
Thank you. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Item D, North Lots land sale, moved by Councillor Wright. Sorry, did you have any comments, Councillor? Okay. Okay. Seconded by Mayor McCabe. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to item E, proposed land exchange with Atrium Waterloo LP. Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Mayor McCabe. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. All right, we're on to the public meeting, formal public meeting 11A. And I need to recuse myself for this.
So I will take the chair back and start with the procedure for the formal public meeting. This is a formal public meeting to consider item 11A, official plan amendment 55 and zoning bylaw amendment Z24-07, Centurion Property Associates Limited, for 1 Columbia Street West, 351 King Street North, and 355 King Street North. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. If there is more than one binder, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the KW Record on May 22nd, 2025, and mailed or emailed on May 15th, 2025, to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property and to public agencies. An informal public meeting was not held.
Thank you. Our planner, Rita Sislak, will now give a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor McCabe, members of council, and members of the public. As mentioned, this is a formal public meeting for 1 Columbia Street West, 351 King Street North, and 355 King Street North. Official Plan Amendment Number 55 and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z2407. The applications were submitted by Centurion Property Associates Limited, represented here tonight by Trevor Hawkins of MHBC Planning. The subject site is located in the Northdale neighborhood on the southwest corner of Columbia Street and King Street North. It is an L-shaped property with frontage on King Street North, Columbia Street West, and Spruce Street. The site is located within the University of Waterloo Major Transit Station Area, or MTSA, well served by transit with a number of transit routes located within 100 meters of the site. In terms of surrounding lands, the subject site is surrounded by low-rise commercial, mid-rise and high-rise residential to the north, low-rise commercial and low-rise residential, institutional and industrial to the east, high-rise, mid-rise, and low-rise residential to the south, and low to mid-rise residential, as well as institutional to the west. These are pictures of the subject site. A 22-story apartment building is located at 1 Columbia Street West, and 351 and 355 King Street North are currently vacant. This is a conceptual perspective of the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to construct a 7-story mixed-use building with 24 residential units and a ground floor commercial area along King Street, as well as ground floor amenity area in behind. The applicant is also proposing interior renovations to the 22-story building, which would result in additional 11 residential units, as well as ground floor amenity space. Finally, the applicant is proposing a 1-story cafe addition to the existing 22-story building, as well as an internal courtyard between the two buildings. This is a conceptual site plan of the proposed development. In total, there would be 35 new residential units containing 100 bedrooms. The proposed development will contain a mix of unit sizes, including bachelor, 1-bedroom, 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. The total commercial area would be approximately 146 square meters, divided between the cafe at 97 square meters in the 22-story building, as well as 49 square meters in the 7-story building. The two buildings would be connected through the underground parking structure, and a total of new parking spaces, 20 new parking spaces are proposed, most of them would be located in the underground parking structure. But in addition, there are 2 visitor parking spaces located here and in the cantilevered portion of the building, as well as a loading space accessed by a driveway off of King Street North. In terms of the official plan, the subject site is located within Special Policy Area 45, which encompasses all of the Northdale neighborhood. It is also designated mixed-use high-density residential, which allows for mixed-use buildings up to a height of 25 stories, but it does not allow for the amenity space to be located on the ground floor. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the subject site is zoned residential Northdale 25, which permits the mixed-use building up to the height of the 25 stories. In terms of density, the maximum density permitted on the site is 1,105 bedrooms per hectare, and it is permitted as a result of a Committee of Adjustment decision from 2015, which legalized the previously legal non-conforming density permissions on the site. So this slide details the requested official plan amendment. The applicant is requesting to maintain the existing mixed-use high-density residential designation and apply a site-specific provision on the site to permit an increase in density to 1,191 bedrooms per hectare, which equates to additional 34 bedrooms, as well as to permit the ground floor amenity space to be located in both the proposed and existing buildings. This slide details the requested zoning bylaw amendment, which is to maintain the existing zoning of residential North L25 while applying site-specific provisions that would be tailored to the proposed development. These include reduced podium height for the cafe, a reduced rear yard to allow the 7-story apartment building, a reduced tower separation between towers on the same lot, as well as between a tower and the interior lot line to accommodate the 7th floor, a 0-meter step back above the podium for the 7th story, an increase in density to align with the official plan amendment request, permission to locate common indoor amenity area on the 1st floor, and permission to allow non-active spaces to exceed 30% of the 1st floor building floor area. Having reviewed the application and all comments received, staff recommend that council approve official plan amendment number 55 and zoning bylaw amendment Z2407 for 1 Columbia Street West, 351 King Street North, and 355 King Street North in accordance with Section 8 of Staff Report IPPW 2025-015. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rita. So council, are there any questions? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Rita, thank you for the overview. My question is actually from Councillor Rowe, who couldn't be here this evening, and it was just clarification, and you may have said it and I might have missed it. Regarding the loading area or drop-off area, it looks like there's a spot on one side, but we're specifically interested in the King Street side.
Right. So currently, as proposed, there's 2 visitor parking spaces here and a loading space here. This is still subject to site plan, which is the detailed design portion. I think, was the concern about deliveries?
Deliveries, and so this is off this will be off King Street North?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is off King Street, and there's another entrance off Spruce with 2 visitor parking spaces located here and a larger loading area here.
There, okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there other questions from any member of council? Just a question from me. I'm curious about the wind protections or mitigations for, you know, wind that may come, with that kind of configuration, I'm curious about how that may come through an area like that.
Certainly. So there was a wind study prepared for this development, and really the addition of the 7-story building improved the conditions. There wasn't any areas on the ground floor that needed any mitigation measures. The rooftop was mentioned, but only if the rooftop, so right now the applicant is proposing a green roof on top of the 7-story building. And if that was converted to amenity area, so a rooftop amenity area, there would have to be some mitigation measures then, but that's not what is being proposed.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no questions from council, you are free to sit, and I will now ask any registered delegations to come forward, and I understand we have Trevor Hawkins, one of our frequent flyers.
I don't think there's anybody else here.
Yeah, welcome, Trevor.
Except for Lance, who's here with me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. I think Rita's covered things quite sufficiently. I think I'll just kind of touch on a few other elements. The property is actually very well served by transit. I know Rita mentioned it's in the major transit station area, so it would be within a walking distance of the station at the University of Waterloo. But it's well served by all these different bus routes that go past this property, including some express routes. Obviously a very walkable area. Emerging projects to the north at sort of Weber and King would be within a short walk. The No Frills, Farm Boy, and all the other development that will occur there, some of which would be employment. So really central to this part of Waterloo, and a great area for some intensification. One of the other things anyone who's walked along this stretch of King Street would notice that you have all those buildings that were built when the city did the heightened density, sort of shortly after the heightened density in the late 20 knots. And then there was these 2 properties that have been left undeveloped for the longest time. So this project really fills in that gap in this stretch of King Street leading up to Columbia, fills it in with a nice mid-rise building that sort of completes this section of King Street and some of the key elements that maybe were missing along this side of King Street, so the commercial uses that will be brought into the new building, but also the One Columbia Tower, so the cafe, commercial use in this the main floor of the new building. Sort of, you got the McDonald's, which is one of the most successful McDonald's in Canada, actually on a per square foot basis, if you believe that. It's true.
I don't think that's a good thing, Trevor.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing. It's a terrible thing if you're trying to get through that intersection, but everyone in the drive-through. But it is an area that has a lot of pedestrians. So this project really will serve the people who are on the other side of the street or looking to cross the street, try something a little different if they've already got their coffee from McDonald's and their Big Mac and they're looking for somewhere to sit or somewhere to experience the cafe. We think this is a great addition. And then the other thing about this project is for anyone who's familiar, and I don't think there's anyone on council that was around when One Columbia was built, but it was built under the old regime. Sort of the flavor of the month at the time was the 5-bedroom units. So I think almost every unit in One Columbia, except for a few, are 5 bedrooms. And so what this project, the 7-story building does, and the renovations within One Columbia, is they sort of broaden the mix of unit sizes. So people who may not want the 5-bedroom model, they're going to have choice now in this sort of combined development. They can have everything from, as Rita said, from bachelor, 1, 2, 3, or they can have the 4 and 5 if that's something they're interested in. So it really helps fill in that gap in this sort of block of King Street with all these towers. A lot of them are 5-bedroom, predominantly towers. Some of the other images, so Rita showed you the sort of shot of the new tower with the landscaped area, the cafe. So it's sort of a lot of glazing on the ground floor as you're walking along King Street. It's very inviting with sort of the cafe linking towards the new building as you're walking down the slope of King. And then you have these sort of seating areas for the residents, maybe some of the amenities that they didn't really have in the One Columbia building. A lot of indoor amenity space in the Columbia building, but now there's a bit more of a enhanced outdoor amenity space for those residents of both the existing building and the new building. So just tying it back to the planning framework, we think this is a good fit, aligns with the PPS, the region's official plan, which is now part of the city's official plan. It's a great fit for the major transit station area, intensifies an underutilized site on this stretch of King Street. And as I said, the commercial uses will activate what is really a very heavily pedestrianized area. So we're here in support of staff's recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. Question from Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions to you, Mayor. So I am just curious, in one of the previous slides or in our package, it almost looked as though the cafe roof might also be a green roof, but is that the case? Can you clarify that?
I think I can clarify that the roof of the 7-story building will be, because as Rita's outlined in her staff report, she's tying that as a recommendation, so that's for sure. Don't know that we've can guarantee the cafe would be, but something that we could explore.
Okay, that would be interesting. I think it showed up as green in one of our little images, so that may have distracted me. The other thing I wanted to ask about is in the energy report, there's lots of really good stuff in there, and considering that this is a purpose-built rental and operating costs will obviously be impacted long-term by the energy efficiency of the building, is there an intent to get to that scenario 2, the high-performance scenario, or is it likely to, just be built to code?
Well, when you say built to code, and I've had this discussion with family members as well, who are definitely in favor of net zero, building to code is very energy efficient, certainly under the new code. So I do think that there needs to be a recognition that under the new rules, when you build a building to code, I mean, it's very energy efficient. A new house compared to, say, the house I live in, or the house Mr. Councillor Bodley lives in, they're dramatically more energy efficient. So I think, yes, building to code is the standard. Can we go beyond that standard, or can we look at that? Yes, we can. I mean, there's still more work to do in this project as we get into the detailed design. Rita's report, you'll note there's a noise study we have to do. So there's elements of the sort of mechanical components of the building that still need to be explored in detail, but we have that base of information to sort of work from that study, and that's the purpose of those studies, is to give a foundation of information so that when the team, which wouldn't be me, goes into the detailed design, they know sort of what they're working with and what they can, work towards.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's two buildings here in consideration, and there'll be, one existing building, one new attachment with some new features. And so I was curious about the potential conflict for HVAC systems and other things when you're trying to marry two facilities. And I know this one was supposed to be connected just through the underground parking, so maybe that won't be an implication. And the other consideration is literally just as we start to explore extreme heat, things like those triple pane windows and the passive elements could be so beneficial to the future occupants of the building. So just being mindful of those things, especially as we're, have a chance to build on to a building that's now from another era and a different climate.
Yeah, agreed. And I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head. They're not physically connected in the sense that they have to share that level of HVAC and so on. And Lance from Studio Lumina, who's the designer, he's hearing all of these comments from you. So I think he's writing things down, and as he goes into the next phase of the design, that's something that he can take into consideration.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Any other comments or questions from council? No, I was going to ask about the energy system, so thanks, Councillor Wright. But yeah, I think as Councillor Wright was referring to, since this is a rental and it's a much longer term use, and we know operating costs are considered much more. So hopefully, that can go into your consideration. Thank you for that. My question is, if this is approved, when would you anticipate this project starting? Or like shovels in the ground? I know the project's underway. This is part of it, the formal meeting tonight, but when would you anticipate being able to start building?
Well, I think the renovations in 1 Columbia are, the first priority. So those are advancing. And then the second priority would be this building. So we have to go through site plans still. So I think the expectation would be we'd go through the site plan approval process. And then, with projects in this neighborhood, which are inevitably going to attract students, you have to sort of time your construction schedule to align with when students are looking for units. Not to say that every unit in this building would be students, but there's inevitably going to be a significant proportion of interest from the student community. So once we get sort of into site plan and we have a sense of the timing, that would probably dictate the construction schedule is when you think you can complete the construction in line with that sort of September, August time frame.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. Sounds like you're working as quickly as possible to move this project forward, which is appreciated. So if there are no more delegations and no further questions from council, then thanks, Trevor. Then this formal public meeting is concluded, and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. Councillor Hanmer.
I'm happy to put the motion forward to put it on the table.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder?
No, I have to read it all.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, be it resolved that council approve report IPPW 2025-015. 2, that council approve official plan amendment number 55, bracket OPA 55, and bracket Centurion Property Associates Limited for 1 Columbia Street West, 351 King Street North, and 355 King Street North as set out in Section 8 of Report IPPW 2025-015, that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z24-07, Centurion Property Associates Limited for 1 Columbia Street West, 351 King Street North, and 355 King Street North in accordance with Section 8 of Report IPPW 2025-015.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bodley. If there's no any questions for comments, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you to Trevor and Lance. So that moves us to consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There are none. There are no notices of motions. There's no communications and correspondence. There's no unfinished business. Council, are there any questions at this time? Seeing none. New business. Are there any? Councillor Vasic.
Thanks through you, Mayor. I just wanted to celebrate the Croydon Southwick neighbors who do their annual barbecue. It was their 31st barbecue this year, and they got some grant funding from the neighborhoods team. So thanks to that team, one of whom was out, and sounds like she goes out to all of the events. So it's some real good dedication from our city staff.
Thank you, Councillor Vasic. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a heads up that this coming Sunday, the Waterloo Concert Band is hosting the first Waterloo Region Community Band Fest at Waterloo Park. And it's a great opportunity to look at that Waterloo Park band shell and give it a thought. So I will be attending.
Give it a long think.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to really hearing from the community of band musicians and just learning a little bit more about what they're looking forward to in future.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through your mayor. I just want to highlight that, as is a great privilege to be acting mayor this month, I had the opportunity to represent Mayor McCabe at the 1596 Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada Royal Canadian Army Cadets Corps annual ceremonial review. It's a mouthful.
Thank you. Thank you.
And hopefully I did you proud, Mayor. Councillor Freeman was also there, and I wish she was still here now, unfortunately. She's not, but I believe she was the returning officer there, and she gave a wonderful speech. And it was really, for me, first time having the opportunity to attend such an event, really interesting event to see how well connected all these cadets are in the community and how oversubscribed the program is, and how they contribute to the Royal Canadian Army. So it was thank you for the opportunity to attend on your behalf, Mayor.
Thank you for taking that opportunity, Councillor. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Again on Sunday, a heads up, a continuation of the community conversations. So if you want to, it's hot on Sunday, come to the splash pad at the boardwalk and join us for Beaver Tales and a good conversation.
And what time?
And then go to the band.
Yeah, and what time is that?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. See you first thing Sunday morning, Councillor Hanmer. And I'll just say that Councillor Roach and I this morning were pleased to attend an announcement with Minister Neil Lumsden from the Minister of Sport, Tourism and Community, I believe is his full title, where the province announced $750,000 to go towards part of the renovations for the Albert McCormick Community Centre. So thank you, Councillor Roach, for joining me there. And of course, the minister announced a lot more funding for a project in Kitchener, but I welcomed him back when we have more provincial funding for the AMCC that we know we need for that as well. So thank you for that. Okay, so enactment of bylaws, Councillor Bodley, moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Roach. All in favor? Keeping you hanging. Adjournment, moved by Councillor Vasic, seconded by Councillor Roach. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.